Welcome to the Deep Dive. Tonight we're looking at, well, a real paradox in art history, Paul Cezanne. How does this quiet, sort of intensely lonely guy, mocked again and again by the art world, how does he become the absolute foundation for modern painting?
It's an amazing story.
We're diving into Cezanne not just as, a name in a book, but as this obsessive revolutionary who spent decades trying to, quote, wrestle truth out of color.
And that phrase, wrestling truth, that's really the core of it.
Yeah.
If you want the blueprint, the actual DNA for things like cubism, for abstract art later on, you trace it right back to Cezanne.
But his hard work.
To a lifetime of painstaking labor, And to really get his revolution, you have to picture Paris around, say, 1862. The whole point of painting was kind of up in the air. It was in crisis.
A double crisis, really. First, you had the official art world, the salon, demanding this impossibly smooth, idealized way of painting. Imitation.
Right. And second, technology had just shown up to prove that perfect imitation was maybe futile.
So top.
Exactly. Photography arrives. And suddenly, it can do the job of perfect representation better, faster, cheaper than any painter ever could.
Wow. Okay.
So that creates this huge intellectual problem for painters. The old question, how do I paint the world beautifully? It suddenly felt, obsolete.
So the new question becomes, if a machine can capture reality, what's left for painting? What's its unique job now?
And our mission tonight is really to unpack Cezanne's unique, incredibly stubborn answer to that. He basically decided painting wasn't about copying surfaces.
No more imitation.
No, it was about construction. He wanted to show the invisible architecture beneath vision. We're going to show you how his really methodical search for structure literally rebuilt how we see art.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The misfit. Cezanne's background. It wasn't artistic at all, was it?
Not remotely. Born in Aix-en-Provence, quiet place, sun-drenched. His father was this stern banker who thought art was, just a hobby.
He wanted him to be a lawyer, right? Practical, predictable.
Definitely predictable. But Paul, predictability wasn't really his thing.
Yeah.
He finally breaks free, heads to Paris in 1862.
And Paris, then. Glittering, noisy.
And totally unforgiving for artists. Cezanne, kind of awkward, intensely sensitive.
Yeah.
He immediately felt like an outsider, an intruder almost.
And his early paintings, they didn't exactly help him fit in.
Oh, not at all. You look at his stuff from the 1860s, like The Abduction. It's dark, it's brooding, violent even.
The way he used paint, thick, doesn't quite cover it. It's like volcanic, right? Applied with knives, spatulas.
Yeah, creating this churning, really visceral texture. It almost felt like it was shouting at you, not singing.
Which was the complete opposite of what the salon wanted.
Absolutely. Academic art demanded that smooth, polished finish, like a window onto some perfect scene with no trace of the artist's effort. Cezanne was doing the polar opposite. He wanted you to see the struggle, the emotion.
You wanted the paint to look like paint.
Exactly. And the establishment. They just reacted with total scorn.
We're not talking about bad reviews here. We're talking brutal, personal attacks. He got refused by the official salon again and again.
The critics were unbelievably cruel. One famously called him a barbarian who paints with a trowel.
Wow.
Another one, just completely baffled by the rawness, said, "If this is art, then I am a cabbage."
It's pretty clear, though, this wasn't because he couldn't paint properly. It was a choice, a refusal.
Oh, completely. He saw that academic style, the polished look, the idealized subjects. He called it a straitjacket. He insisted on something raw, something unrepentant.
And that insistence, that need for raw truth, it basically guaranteed he'd be lonely in Paris.
It did. He needed his art to be this deep existential search. Not just about making pretty pictures or selling them, but the violence in those early works. It wasn't quite getting him where he needed to go. He was painting chaos, but he was searching for permanence.
Luckily, he found a lifeline. Camille Pissarro.
Ah, Pissarro, yes. The sort of calm, wise, artistic older brother figure. He saw the courage under all that chaos.
And he was crucial, wasn't he? Gave him some key advice.
Hugely important. Pissarro didn't try to crush Cezanne's intensity, but he guided him towards more discipline. Critically, he told him, lighten your palette, stop using all that black and mud.
And use smaller brushstrokes.
Yes, smaller, more controlled brushstrokes. And that advice, that was the seed for Cezanne's signature method, the constructive stroke.
Okay, explain that, the constructive stroke.
Well, Cezanne started to see painting not as finishing something, in the old sense, but as building it, piece by piece.
Yeah.
Like a stonemason builds a wall.
So the stroke itself is like a brick.
Pretty much. It's often misunderstood as just being about texture, but it's way deeper. It's usually a small, parallel, sort of rectangular touch of paint. And by stacking these strokes side by side, he used slight shifts in color modulation to create form and depth.
So he wasn't shading in the traditional way.
No, he was literally constructing the volume, the roundness of an object, just through placing colors next to each other very precisely.
But even with this technical breakthrough, the frustration didn't just disappear, right? He was still struggling.
Oh, definitely. He got more and more solitary. There's that famous story where he storms out of a literary evening at Emile Zola's place.
His childhood friend, Zola.
Right. And he's supposedly muttering that they were all just painting with air, disgusted by all the abstract talk.
He needed something solid.
He needed substance, gravity. So he retreats. He turns his little cold studio on Rue de List into this refuge, this laboratory, and that's where the real revolution kicks off. Not with grand scenes, but with apple.
Humble apples. He painted still lifes obsessively. Apples, pears, bottles, cloth. Over and over. And that's where he makes that famous, almost absurd promise. With an apple, I will astonish Paris.
Yeah, people mocked him for it. But why apples? Why the obsession?
What was it about the apple?
Because for Cezanne, these weren't just props on a table. They were like meditations. He called them living entities. He wasn't just arranging fruit. He was doing optical dissections. He figured if he could truly understand the structure of one apple, he could grasp the structure of everything.
And if you look really closely at those still lifes, the surface, how it looks at first glance, that becomes less important.
Exactly. What he's prioritizing is the geometry. How does the tilt of that bottle relate to the fold in the cloth? How does the curve of this apple balance the flat plane of the table? He's mapping the relationships. That's the invisible architecture beneath vision.
So this was his way of dealing with a world that felt like it was moving too fast.
I think so. Outside, you've got industrialization, speed, chaos. Inside the studio, Cezanne's trying to slow time down, freeze the chaos, find something permanent in the basic shapes of things.
Speaking of permanence, his search eventually takes him away from Paris altogether, back to Aix.
Right. Back home to find his ultimate subject, his muse, Mont Sainte-Victoire.
That mountain, that jagged ridge of limestone outside Aix. He painted it, 60, 80 times?
Somewhere in that range, over decades. It was this obsessive, almost religious ritual for him.
Why that mountain again and again? It feels like more than just landscape painting.
Oh, it's definitely a spiritual quest. He actually said, the landscape thinks itself in me, and I, its consciousness. He was trying to decode the mountain, maybe to understand himself, wrestling with the very act of seeing.
And there's that interesting wrinkle, the physical aspect. Our historians still debate this, right, about his eyesight.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He apparently had a mild form of strabismus, a slight eye misalignment.
Which might have meant he literally saw the world a bit off-kilter, or like overlapping planes.
Possibly. Did that physical imperfection, if you want to call it that, help him realize that what we see isn't stable, that reality itself is kind of shifting and complex? It's hard to say for sure, but it certainly fits with where his art was going.
Pushing him away from Impressionism's fleeting moments.
Absolutely. He famously said he wanted to make of Impressionism something solid and lasting, like the art of museums. He wasn't chasing shimmer anymore. He wanted weight, structure, something that would endure.
Okay, but using brush strokes, even stacked ones, isn't that still kind of impressionistic? How did his goal really change the method?
It changed because the job of color changed completely. For Impressionists, color was mostly about capturing light and atmosphere. For Cezanne, color defines form.
Ah, okay.
By layering those constructive strokes, those little patches of color, he was building the object's shape and volume. He insisted art is a harmony parallel to nature. He wasn't copying nature, he was building a visual equivalent to its structure.
Which leads us to that famous wobble in his paintings, the intentional instability.
Yes, you see it all the time in the still lifes. Tables that tilt strangely, bottles that don't quite line up, different vanishing points in the same picture.
That's not him making mistakes.
No way. That instability is revolutionary. He's showing you multiple viewpoints at once. He's painting how our eyes and brain actually assemble a view over time, moving around an object. He wasn't painting how things look in one frozen instant.
But how they feel to be seen.
Exactly. How they feel to be perceived over the duration of looking. That shift, that's the tectonic plate moving under modern art.
It's genius, that relentless pursuit, giving perception itself a kind of physical weight on the canvas. Yet, despite all this incredible work, when he died in 1906...
Collapsed while painting the mountain in a storm. famously.
Right. His death was pretty much ignored by the Paris art world.
The irony is just, it's wrenching. The man dies thinking he failed to achieve his vision, failed to make it solid enough. And within just a few years, he becomes this quiet detonator for 20th century art.
Young painters started passing his works around.
Like secret blueprints, Matisse, and especially Picasso.
Yeah.
They got hold of his paintings, his letters, and they realized, wait a minute, he didn't fail Impressionism, he went beyond it. He gave them a whole new alphabet.
The Cubist connection, that's direct, isn't it?
Absolutely direct. Cezanne gave them the vocabulary. He taught them to stop seeing nature as just, leaves and curves, but to break it down into fundamental forms.
The cylinders, spheres, and cones.
That geometric decomposition. That was the DNA that Cubism needed. It gave Picasso and Braque the intellectual permission to fracture reality, to show multiple sides at once. Picasso famously said, "Cezanne was my one and only master."
So when you look at something like Les Demoiselles d'Avignon,
those jagged structural planes, you're seeing Cezanne's geometry pushed to its radical conclusion.
So he fundamentally showed that painting could be about building, about interpreting structure, not just copying surfaces or capturing light.
He forced you, the viewer, to feel the paint, to see the solidity, the construction.
Yeah.
And that changed everything for art that came after.
But you mentioned the human cost, this obsessive perfectionism.
Yeah, we can't forget that. He destroyed so many paintings, canvases that others thought were masterpieces, always muttering, "It's not finished." Was it madness, ego, or just the unbearable weight of seeing too much, seeing that underlying structure and knowing you could never perfectly capture it?
Maybe that weight, that sense of almost failure, was the price he had to pay for the revolution.
Could be.
His journey. From that barbarian with the trowel to the quiet architect who rebuilt how we see. It's just one of art history's most profound stories. His genius wasn't flashy. It was in the relentless, patient search for structure.
And you can still feel it. His studio is preserved in his brushes, his easel, the view of Mont Sainte-Victoire. It's all still there. He showed us that art isn't just a statement. It's a question that keeps asking itself.
Which kind of leaves a challenge for you listening to this. Cezanne proved that to really understand something, you have to break it down. You have to see its fundamental components, its spheres and cones, before you can grasp its structure.
Right. So if Cezanne believed the goal wasn't just to capture reality, but to construct a deeper, more durable truth, where in your own life, in your own way of looking at things, are you maybe settling for just the surface appearance?
What are the hidden structures?
What are the cylinders, spheres, and cones you're not seeing, not analyzing in your own daily vision? Maybe that's your next deep dive.